At 3:17 in the morning on May 11, 1945, Private First Class John R. McKinney was sitting behind a broken machine gun on a ridge overlooking Dingalan Bay when he heard the sound that every soldier in the Pacific Theater had been taught to fear. Voices in the darkness. Japanese voices, dozens of them, moving fast through the jungle undergrowth toward his position. McKinney was 24 years old, a machine gunner from Company A, 123rd Infantry Regiment, 33rd Infantry Division, 5 feet 9 inches tall, 160 pounds, brown hair, quiet. The kind of soldier who did his job and didn't complain. He had been in the Philippines since January. 4 months of combat. Malaria twice. A shrapnel wound in his left arm that hadn't healed properly. And now he was sitting behind a machine gun that wouldn't fire. The weapon had jammed 2 hours earlier during a brief exchange with Japanese scouts. McKinney had tried to clear it, pulled back the bolt, checked the feed tray, cleared the chamber. Nothing worked. Something internal was broken. A spring maybe, or a firing pin. In daylight with proper tools, an armorer could fix it, but it was 3:17 in the morning and McKinney had no tools and the Japanese voices were getting closer. The rest of his squad was asleep. 8 men scattered in foxholes along the ridge. They had been on the line for 11 days straight. The company commander had authorized 4-hour sleep rotations. McKinney had drawn first watch. He was supposed to wake the next man at 0400. That was 43 minutes away. He could hear the Japanese clearly now. They weren't trying to be quiet anymore. They were talking, calling to each other, coordinating. McKinney counted voices. 15 at minimum. Probably more. Coming straight at his position, McKinney grabbed his M1 Garand rifle and crawled to the foxhole where Sergeant Olson was sleeping. He shook Olson's shoulder. Olson woke instantly, hand going to his rifle. McKinney whispered what he had heard. Olson listened for 3 seconds, then told McKinney to wake the others. McKinney moved to the next foxhole. Before he reached it, the Japanese attacked. The first wave came up the ridge at 3:19 a.m. Not running, walking fast, rifles ready, bayonets fixed. McKinney could see them in the moonlight. 20 men at least. Dark uniforms, cloth caps, moving in a loose line through the trees. McKinney raised his Garand and fired. The lead Japanese soldier dropped. McKinney worked the Garand's action. The rifle ejected the spent cartridge and chambered a fresh round automatically. Semi-automatic, 8 rounds per clip. He fired again. A second Japanese soldier fell. Then the rest of the Japanese line opened fire. Muzzle flashes lit up the jungle. Bullets snapped past McKinney's head and struck the trees behind him. He dropped flat and rolled left into a shallow depression. The Japanese were 40 yards away and closing. McKinney could hear his squad waking up. Men shouting, rifles firing. Sergeant Olson was yelling orders. But the Japanese weren't stopping. They were coming straight up the ridge through the American fire. McKinney shot a 3rd Japanese soldier at 30 yards, a 4th at 25 yards. His Garand's bolt locked back. Empty. He ejected the clip and loaded a new one. 8 more rounds. The Japanese were 20 yards away now. McKinney could see their faces. Young faces. Determined faces. Men who believed they were about to die and wanted to take Americans with them. This was a banzai charge, the Japanese tactic of last resort. When tactical retreat was impossible or unacceptable, when ammunition was low, when hope was gone, Japanese commanders ordered their men to fix bayonets and charge directly at enemy positions. The goal was not survival. The goal was to kill as many Americans as possible before being killed, and to die with honor. The 123rd Infantry had faced banzai charges before. On Luzon. On other islands. The tactic was terrifying but predictable. Japanese soldiers would charge in waves. The first wave would absorb American fire and die. The second wave would exploit the gap while Americans reloaded. The third wave would close to bayonet range. If enough Japanese soldiers reached American lines, the position would collapse in hand-to-hand fighting. The counter was simple. Maintain fire discipline. Shoot the first wave down. Reload fast. Shoot the second wave down. Keep shooting until the charge broke, or every Japanese soldier was dead. But that required functioning weapons and enough ammunition and soldiers who didn't panic. McKinney shot his 5th Japanese soldier at 15 yards, his 6th at 10 yards, his 7th at point-blank range, 3 feet away. The Japanese soldier had cleared the ridge and was raising his rifle. McKinney fired from the hip. The soldier collapsed forward. His rifle clattered against McKinney's boots. Then the first wave hit. Japanese soldiers came over the ridge in a mass, not a line anymore, just men running forward with bayonets extended. McKinney's Garand clicked empty. He dropped it and grabbed the dead Japanese soldier's rifle, an Arisaka Type 99. Bolt action. 5 rounds. McKinney worked the bolt and fired. The rifle kicked hard. Different recoil than the Garand. He worked the bolt again. Fired. Worked the bolt. Fired. A Japanese soldier lunged at him with a bayonet. McKinney sidestepped and swung the Arisaka like a club. The rifle stock connected with the soldier's head. The soldier went down. McKinney reversed the rifle and shot another Japanese soldier coming up behind the first. Then he dropped the Arisaka and picked up his Garand. The ridge was chaos. Japanese soldiers and Americans mixed together in the darkness. Muzzle flashes everywhere. Men shouting in English and Japanese. The sound of rifle fire and bayonets hitting rifle stocks and men screaming. McKinney reloaded his Garand and shot an 8th Japanese soldier at 5 yards. The man had been grappling with one of McKinney's squad mates. The squad mate nodded at McKinney and turned to engage another Japanese soldier. McKinney looked around. The first wave was breaking. Japanese soldiers were falling back down the ridge. Some were dragging wounded. Others were just running. The Americans on the ridge were shooting at their backs. McKinney counted his squad. 7 men still fighting. 1 man was down. McKinney couldn't tell if he was dead or wounded. Then the second wave attacked. 40 Japanese soldiers this time. More than the first wave. They came up the ridge firing from the hip. Wildfire. Not aimed. Just volume. Bullets kicked up dirt and struck trees and ricocheted off rocks. McKinney dropped behind the broken machine gun and started shooting. He emptied his Garand into the advancing Japanese. 8 shots, 6 hits, 2 misses due to movement and darkness. He reloaded and kept firing. The Japanese were 30 yards away, 20 yards, 15 yards. The American line was starting to break. McKinney could see men falling back. Sergeant Olson was still firing, but his position was about to be overrun. 3 Japanese soldiers were closing on him from different angles. Olson shot 1. The other 2 kept coming. McKinney shot the second Japanese soldier. The third reached Olson. The 2 men collided. Olson's rifle went flying. The Japanese soldier raised his bayonet. Olson grabbed the rifle barrel with both hands. They struggled. McKinney couldn't shoot without hitting Olson. He ran toward them instead. McKinney covered the distance in 4 seconds. He reversed his Garand and swung the rifle stock into the Japanese soldier's ribs. The impact lifted the man off his feet. He dropped. Olson grabbed his rifle and shot the man in the chest. Olson looked at McKinney. His face was bleeding. A cut above his left eye. He said, "They're coming again." McKinney turned. The third wave was already moving up the ridge, not charging this time. Advancing carefully, using cover, fire, and movement. These soldiers were different, more disciplined, better trained. They were shooting at specific targets instead of firing wildly. McKinney watched one Japanese soldier drop behind a tree, aim, fire, then move to new cover while his partner provided suppressing fire. Good tactics. McKinney shot the moving soldier. The man's partner immediately shifted his aim toward McKinney. McKinney dropped flat as the bullet snapped past. He crawled left, 3 feet, and came up in a different position. The Japanese soldier was scanning McKinney's previous location. McKinney shot him before he could adjust, but more were coming. McKinney counted 15 Japanese soldiers within 50 yards of his position. They were spreading out, flanking, trying to envelop the American position from both sides. If they succeeded, the ridge would be surrounded. The squad would have to withdraw or be wiped out. Sergeant Olson made the decision. He shouted for the squad to fall back to secondary positions 40 yards behind the ridgeline. The men started moving, bounding overwatch. One man runs while the others cover him. Then the next man runs while the first man covers him. Basic infantry tactics. But it required coordination and discipline under fire. McKinney was the last man on the ridge. His job was to provide covering fire while the rest of the squad displaced. He settled behind the broken machine gun and started shooting. The Japanese soldiers were 30 yards away. McKinney shot the closest one, then the next closest, then the next. His Garand clicked empty. He reloaded, kept shooting. The Japanese realized one man was covering the American withdrawal. They concentrated fire on McKinney's position. Bullets struck the machine gun, struck the sandbags, struck the dirt around McKinney's head. He kept firing, shot another Japanese soldier, another. His Garand clicked empty again. McKinney reached for a fresh clip. His hand touched empty cloth. He had run out of ammunition. 8 clips fired, 64 rounds. He looked around for more ammunition. Found 2 clips on the ground near a dead squad mate. Loaded 1. Fired his remaining 8 shots into the advancing Japanese. Then loaded the last clip. 8 rounds left. 15 Japanese soldiers closing on his position. McKinney made a decision. He would not fall back. If he left, the Japanese would overrun the ridge and catch the rest of his squad in open ground during their withdrawal. The squad needed more time. McKinney would buy it for them. He fired his last 8 rounds methodically. 1 shot per target. 8 Japanese soldiers dropped. 7 left. They were 20 yards away now. McKinney's Garand locked back empty. No more ammunition. He looked at the broken machine gun. Still broken. He looked at the Japanese soldiers advancing toward him. They had seen his bolt lock back. They knew he was empty. They were spreading out to surround him. McKinney picked up his Garand by the barrel and stood up. The rifle weighed 9.5 pounds, mostly steel and wood. The stock was walnut, hardwood, dense. The rifle was designed to withstand bayonet fighting. The stock was reinforced at the balance point to handle impact. McKinney had been trained on this at basic training. If you run out of ammunition, flip your rifle and use it as a club. The instructors demonstrated on dummies. McKinney had never done it in combat. The first Japanese soldier reached the ridgeline. He was young, maybe 19 years old. He had his bayonet extended. He thrust at McKinney's stomach. McKinney sidestepped and swung his Garand like a baseball bat. The rifle stock connected with the soldier's head. The sound was a dull crack. The soldier dropped instantly. His rifle fell from his hands. The second Japanese soldier attacked from McKinney's right. McKinney pivoted and swung again. The stock hit the soldier's shoulder and knocked him sideways. The soldier stumbled but didn't fall. He raised his rifle. McKinney swung again. This time he aimed for the rifle, not the man. The Garand stock struck the Arisaka barrel and knocked it aside. Then McKinney reversed his swing and brought the stock up into the soldier's chin. The soldier's head snapped back. He collapsed. The third Japanese soldier was smarter. He stayed back, out of range of McKinney's rifle stock. He raised his Arisaka and aimed at McKinney's chest. McKinney dove left as the rifle fired. The bullet passed through empty space. McKinney hit the ground and rolled, came up 5 feet from the Japanese soldier. Too close for the soldier to aim his rifle. McKinney charged, swung his Garand at the soldier's head. The soldier raised his rifle to block. The two rifles collided, wood on wood. The Arisaka stock cracked. McKinney swung again. The Japanese soldier blocked again. The Arisaka stock shattered. The soldier was left holding just the barrel and action. McKinney swung a third time. The Garand stock hit the soldier in the side of the head. The soldier dropped. 4 Japanese soldiers left. They were hanging back now. They had watched 3 of their comrades die in hand-to-hand combat with a man using a rifle as a club. They were reassessing. One of them shouted something in Japanese. The others spread out wider. They were going to try to surround McKinney and attack from multiple angles simultaneously. McKinney didn't give them time. He charged the nearest soldier. The soldier raised his rifle to fire. McKinney was already too close. He swung his Garand at the soldier's rifle. The stock connected with the barrel and knocked the weapon aside. The rifle fired into the ground. McKinney reversed his swing and hit the soldier in the ribs. The soldier doubled over. McKinney brought the rifle stock down on the back of the soldier's head. The soldier collapsed face first. 3 Japanese soldiers left. They attacked together. 1 from the front, 2 from the sides. The soldier in front thrust his bayonet at McKinney's stomach. McKinney knocked the bayonet aside with his rifle barrel and swung the stock at the soldier's head. The soldier ducked. The stock passed over his head. McKinney felt something hit his back. Pain. Sharp pain. He turned. One of the flanking soldiers had bayoneted him. The blade had entered his lower back on the right side. Not deep. The thick canvas of McKinney's pack harness had blocked most of the penetration. But it hurt. McKinney grabbed the rifle barrel with his left hand and pulled. The Japanese soldier pulled back. They struggled for the rifle. McKinney swung his Garand one-handed at the soldier's head. The soldier released his rifle and ducked. McKinney's swing missed. But now McKinney had the soldier's rifle. He dropped his own Garand and gripped the captured Arisaka with both hands. He reversed it and slammed the stock into the soldier's face. The soldier fell. 2 Japanese soldiers left. McKinney turned to face them. Both were backing away now. They had watched 5 of their comrades die in the span of 40 seconds. They were reconsidering their attack. One of them said something to the other. They both turned and started running back down the ridge. McKinney picked up his Garand. He checked the rifle. The stock was cracked but still attached. The barrel was straight. The action was still functional, just empty. He looked around for ammunition, found a bandolier on another dead squad mate. 6 clips, 48 rounds. He loaded 1 clip into his Garand. Then he looked down the ridge. The Japanese were regrouping at the bottom. McKinney could see them. Maybe 20 men left from the original force. They were dragging their wounded, collecting weapons, talking among themselves. They kept looking up at the ridge, at McKinney. He was standing on top of the ridgeline, silhouetted against the sky. An easy target, but none of them were shooting at him. McKinney realized that they were done. The attack had failed. 3 waves had hit the American position. The Americans had held. The Japanese had lost too many men. They couldn't take the ridge. Not tonight. McKinney watched them withdraw into the jungle. They moved, slowly, carrying their wounded. By 3:55 in the morning, they were gone. McKinney turned and looked at his position. The broken machine gun was still there, surrounded by empty cartridge cases, spent Garand clips, dead Japanese soldiers. He counted them. 40 bodies. Some had been shot. Some had been clubbed. McKinney looked at his Garand. The stock was cracked in 3 places. There was blood on it. Japanese blood. And his own blood. His back was still bleeding from the bayonet wound. Sergeant Olson appeared at the ridgeline with the rest of the squad. They had heard the fighting stop. They came back to check on McKinney. Olson looked at the dead Japanese soldiers. Looked at McKinney. Looked at the broken rifle stock. He asked McKinney if he was injured. McKinney said his back hurt. Olson called for a medic. The medic checked McKinney's back. The bayonet wound was shallow, 1 inch deep. Clean entry, no major damage. The medic cleaned it and bandaged it. He said McKinney would need stitches but could wait until morning. McKinney said he was fine. He picked up his Garand and started looking for more ammunition. The squad spent the rest of the night on the ridge. They reinforced their positions, collected weapons and ammunition from the dead Japanese soldiers, tended to their own wounded. 1 man had been killed during the second wave. 2 others were wounded. 1 with a gunshot wound to the leg, another with a bayonet wound to the shoulder. Both would survive. At dawn, the company commander arrived with 2 platoons. He had heard the fighting from his position half a mile away. He wanted a report. Sergeant Olson provided it. 100 Japanese soldiers had attacked. 3 waves, 40 enemy killed, 1 American killed, 2 wounded. The position had held. The company commander asked who had killed the Japanese soldiers. Olson pointed at McKinney. Said McKinney had been on watch when the attack started. Said McKinney had alerted the squad. Said McKinney had killed the first Japanese soldiers. Said McKinney had stayed on the ridge during the withdrawal to cover the squad. Said McKinney had run out of ammunition and fought hand-to-hand with his rifle stock. Said McKinney had killed at least 12 enemy soldiers with his rifle as a club. The company commander looked at McKinney. McKinney was sitting on the ground, cleaning his Garand. The rifle's stock was shattered. 3 major cracks. The wood was held together mostly by the metal fittings. The company commander asked McKinney if this was accurate. McKinney said he didn't know how many he had killed. He had just kept fighting. The company commander told McKinney to get a new rifle from supply. McKinney said he wanted to keep this one. The company commander said that rifle was no longer serviceable. McKinney said he would fix it. The company commander didn't argue. McKinney spent that morning repairing his Garand. He removed the cracked stock and replaced it with a new one from a rifle that had belonged to the dead squad mate. He kept the original stock, wrapped it in canvas, and put it in his pack. Someone later asked him why he kept broken wood. McKinney said it had done good work. The 123rd Infantry Regiment continued operations on Luzon through June. They fought at Balit Pass. They cleared Japanese positions in the mountains east of Manila. They took casualties, disease, combat, exhaustion. By July, the regiment had been in continuous combat for 6 months. They were pulled back for rest and refit. McKinney received orders to report to division headquarters on July 8th. He didn't know why. He asked Sergeant Olson if he had done something wrong. Olson said he didn't think so. McKinney reported to headquarters. A colonel was waiting. The colonel had paperwork, medal recommendations. The company commander had recommended McKinney for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation had been approved by regiment, approved by division, approved by corps, approved by MacArthur's headquarters. The paperwork was complete. McKinney would receive the Medal of Honor for actions on May 11, 1945. The colonel read the citation. McKinney listened. The citation described the Japanese attack, described McKinney's defense, described the hand-to-hand fighting, described 40 enemy soldiers killed. The citation specifically stated that McKinney clubbed them to death in hand-to-hand combat when his ammunition ran out. McKinney didn't say much. He thanked the colonel. The colonel said the medal would be presented later, probably in the United States. After the war ended, McKinney asked if he could return to his unit. The colonel said yes. The war ended on August 15, 1945. Japan surrendered. The 33rd Infantry Division remained in the Philippines through September. They processed Japanese prisoners, secured weapons, prepared for occupation duty in Japan. McKinney went with them. The Medal of Honor was presented on January 11, 1946. President Harry Truman made the presentation at the White House. McKinney traveled to Washington with his family. his mother, his father, 2 brothers. They stood in the East Room while Truman placed the medal around McKinney's neck. Truman shook McKinney's hand, said the nation was grateful, said McKinney had done something extraordinary. McKinney said he had just done his job. The ceremony lasted 15 minutes. There were photographers, reporters, questions McKinney didn't want to answer. He gave brief responses. Yes, he remembered the night. No, he hadn't been scared. No, he didn't think of himself as a hero. He had just been doing what needed to be done. The reporters wrote down his answers. The next day, newspapers across the country carried the story. Soldier Clubs 12, Japanese to death. Georgia private wins Medal of Honor. Bayonet charge stopped by 1 man. McKinney returned to Georgia after the ceremony. He was discharged from the Army in February 1946. 25 years old. Medal of Honor recipient. He went home to Woodstock, Georgia. Population 300. He got a job at a textile mill. Worked there for 30 years. Married. Had 3 children. Lived quietly. People in Woodstock knew about the medal. McKinney kept it in a drawer. Didn't talk about it much. When people asked, he gave short answers. Yes, he had been in the Philippines. Yes, he had been in combat. Yes, he had received the medal. But he didn't elaborate, didn't tell stories, didn't make speeches. He went to work, came home, raised his family. In 1968, a reporter from Atlanta came to Woodstock. He was writing a story about Georgia Medal of Honor recipients. He wanted to interview McKinney. McKinney agreed to talk for 20 minutes. The reporter asked about May 11th, 1945. McKinney described the attack, described the fighting. The reporter asked how McKinney felt during the fight. McKinney said he didn't remember feeling anything. He had just been trying to stay alive and keep his squad alive. The reporter asked if McKinney had nightmares. McKinney said no. The reporter asked if McKinney thought about the men he had killed. McKinney said he tried not to. The interview was published in the Atlanta Constitution. It was 3 paragraphs. Most of the article focused on other Medal of Honor recipients. McKinney was mentioned briefly. 1 man. 1 night. 40 enemy soldiers. The article got a few details wrong. Said McKinney had killed 15 men with his rifle stock instead of 12. Said the fight lasted 2 hours instead of 36 minutes. McKinney didn't correct the errors. He figured it didn't matter. McKinney retired from the textile mill in 1976. He was 55 years old. He spent his retirement fishing, working in his garden, watching his grandchildren. He attended veteran reunions occasionally. The 33rd Infantry Division Association held annual meetings. McKinney went to a few, saw men he had served with. Sergeant Olson, others from Company A. They reminisced, talked about the Philippines, about Luzon, about the men who hadn't come home. McKinney listened more than he talked. In 1995, a high school history teacher in Woodstock asked McKinney to speak to his class. The teacher was doing a unit on World War II. He wanted the students to hear from someone who had been there. McKinney was reluctant, but the teacher persisted. McKinney agreed to 1 visit. He stood in front of 30 teenagers and told them about May 11th, 1945. He described the banzai charge, described running out of ammunition, described using his rifle as a club. The students were silent. When McKinney finished, they had questions. How many Japanese soldiers were there? McKinney said about 100. How many did you kill? McKinney said 40 had been counted on the ridge. Did you get wounded? McKinney said he took a bayonet in the back. Does it still hurt? McKinney said not anymore. Were you scared? McKinney thought about this question longer than the others. Then he said yes. He had been terrified. But there had been no time to think about fear. There had only been time to fight. The teacher asked McKinney to come back. McKinney declined. He said once was enough. The students wrote thank you letters. McKinney kept them in the same drawer as his medal. John R. McKinney died on November 11, 1997, Veterans Day. He was 76 years old. Heart failure. He was buried in Woodstock Cemetery with full military honors. The ceremony included a 21-gun salute. A bugler played taps. A folded flag was presented to his widow. The Medal of Honor was placed on display at the Woodstock Veterans Memorial. It sits in a glass case next to McKinney's photograph, a young man in uniform, 1946. The photograph was taken at the White House after Truman presented the medal. Most people who visit the memorial read the plaque. It describes McKinney's actions on May 11, 1945. 100 Japanese soldiers. Banzai charge. 36 minutes. 40 enemy killed. 12 clubbed to death when ammunition ran out. The plaque doesn't mention that McKinney was alone, that his machine gun was broken, that he stayed on the ridge to buy time for his squad to withdraw, that he used a broken rifle as a weapon because he had nothing else. The rifle McKinney carried that night was never recovered. After the war, McKinney's personal effects were shipped home. His uniforms, his equipment, his medals, but not the Garand he had used on the ridge. That rifle had been turned into Army supply when McKinney received a replacement. It went into a depot somewhere, was probably refurbished, was probably issued to another soldier, or was scrapped after the war when the military switched to new weapons. The rifle that had killed 40 men and saved a squad was just another serial number in Army records. But the cracked stock McKinney had removed and saved made it home. McKinney kept it in his garage. His son found it after McKinney died. Didn't know what it was. Asked his mother. She explained. The son wanted to donate it to a museum. The mother said McKinney wouldn't have wanted that. She said he would have wanted it thrown away. Just broken wood. The son kept it anyway. It sits in his home now. A piece of walnut stock. 3 major cracks. Still held together by the metal fittings. No one except family knows it exists. The ridge where McKinney fought is still there. Dingalan Bay, Luzon, the Philippines. The jungle has reclaimed it. The foxholes have collapsed. The trees have grown back. There's no marker, no plaque, nothing to indicate that on May 11th, 1945, one man with a broken rifle stood on that ridge for 36 minutes and refused to let 100 enemy soldiers pass. The Japanese soldiers McKinney killed were never identified. 40 men. Someone's sons. Someone's brothers. They had names, families, lives before the war, but no records exist. Japanese units on Luzon in May 1945 were disintegrated. Most records were destroyed. The men who attacked McKinney's position were probably part of the Shimbu Group, Japanese forces defending the mountains east of Manila. But which unit? Which company? Which platoon? Unknown. They attacked. They died. They were buried in mass graves by American graves registration units. Their families never learned what happened to them. War reduces people to numbers. 40 enemy killed. 100 attackers. 36 minutes. 12 clubbed to death. The numbers tell a story, but they don't capture what happened on that ridge. The fear. The exhaustion. The split-second decisions. The sound of rifle stocks hitting bone. The weight of fighting alone in darkness against men trying to kill you. Numbers can't capture that. McKinney understood this. That's why he didn't talk about May 11th unless asked. That's why he kept his answers short. That's why he lived quietly in a small town and worked in a textile mill and raised his family and tried to forget. Because some things can't be explained. Some things can only be survived. And surviving is enough. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every like helps us share forgotten stories like this one with more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We're bringing history back from the archives every day. Real people. Real courage. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community spans the entire world. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure John R. McKinney doesn't disappear into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.